The champagne flute slips from my fingers, shattering on the polished wood floor. 1,000 tiny crystals explode outwards, mirroring the chaotic burst in my chest. Not from the sound, no. It's the text message glowing innocently on my phone screen that rips the air from my lungs. Marcus Webb, my former label head, the man who told me my voice was a liability. Congratulations on your little indie success, Maya. Heard Fractures and Gold went platinum. Cute. Too bad you'll never have a real career with that voice. Some things just aren't marketable, sweetheart. MW. The air in my loft, moments ago buzzing with the joyous energy of my platinum album party, suddenly feels thick, unbreathable. The metallic tang of expensive champagne mingles with a phantom scent, the musty, stale air of Marcus's office from that day. That day, 18 months ago when he'd dismissed me, my dreams, my very essence, with a flick of his manicured hand. The memory stings, sharp and unwelcome, a shard of glass from the fallen flute pressed against my skin. My current manager is Sarah Chen, a woman whose belief in me has been a steady flame, materializes at my side. Her hand, warm and grounding, settles on my arm. Maya, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I try to smile, but it feels like a grimace. Something like that. My gaze drifts across the room, a sea of smiling faces. My band, my small but fierce team from Resonance Records, friends who've been there since the open mic nights and dusty bars. They celebrate with me, for me. None of them know the depth of the wound Marcus's words just reopened. The irony isn't lost on me. His little indie success just outsold his entire label's roster for the quarter. The numbers, confirmed by industry trackers this morning, are undeniable. My unmarketable voice is apparently quite marketable indeed. It feels like I'm living that rejection all over again, but this time the world is watching. It's Marcus, I finally manage, my voice barely a whisper. The name feels heavy like a stone in my mouth. I can almost smell the expensive leather of his chair, a scent that once symbolized aspiration, now only triggers revulsion. The clinking of glasses around us, the joyous laughter, it all fades into a dull roar, replaced by the booming echo of his pronouncement from that sterile, impersonal office. Your voice, Maya, it's just not what we're looking for. It's unmarketable. He'd drawled the word out as if tasting something unpleasant. My best friend and now unofficial PR manager, Zoe, her fiery red hair a beacon in the crowded room, catches my eye. She knows. She was the one who picked up the pieces after Marcus shattered them. She strides over, her expression instantly concerned. Webb, what does that slime ball want now? I show them the phone. Sarah's eyes narrow, a silent fury building in their depths. Zoe just scoffs, a sound dripping with contempt. The audacity of that man. Little indie success? She gestures around the room at the platinum plaque now carefully propped against a speaker, the original now in pieces on the floor, at the genuine joy radiating from everyone. This, Maya, is a *****ing empire you're building. A slow anger begins to burn through the shock. He didn't get to diminish this. Not again. My fingers, surprisingly steady, tap out a screenshot of the text. Then, I open the industry report, screenshotting the sales figures, Meridian Records' dismal numbers stark against my own soaring ones. Side by side, the images paint a very clear picture. A quiet power surges through me. He thought he could break me, then and now. He was wrong. Zoe grins, a predatory glint in her eyes. Oh, this is gold, Maya, pure gold. What are you going to do? The air in the room still hums with celebration, oblivious to the silent drama unfolding. The scent of success, sweet and heady, battles the phantom smell of rejection. I look at the two screenshots, the condescending words, and the triumphant numbers. A plan, sharp and satisfying, begins to form. I'm going to respond. Oh, I am definitely going to respond. But how? The answer hovers, just out of reach, a tantalizing promise of vindication. The night is young, and the story, it seems, is far from over. This isn't just about a platinum album anymore. This is about reclaiming a narrative he tried to steal. This is about being reborn from the ashes of his dismissal, The weight of his words, "Too bad you'll never have a real career," still echoes, a faint, bitter counterpoint to the vibrant music pulsating through my loft. My team, my chosen family, they believed. Jake, my sound engineer, who heard magic in my raspy tones. Sarah, who offered me a contract that celebrated my uniqueness, not tried to sandpaper it down. Zoe, who never once let me believe Marcus Webb's verdict was the final word. Their faces, alight with pride, anchor me to this present, this victory. The metallic taste of champagne is still there, but now it's underscored by something else. Determination. He wanted to throw a shadow over this moment. I won't let him. The question isn't if I'll respond, but how to make it resonate with the same force his rejection once did. The first step is already taken. Document the insult. Document the truth. The next step? That needs to be perfect. The memory claws its way to the surface, vivid and unwelcome. 18 months ago. Meridian Records. The name itself had sounded like a promise, a gateway to everything I'd ever wanted. I remember the feel of the plush carpet sinking beneath my worn boots as I walked down the long, art-lined corridor towards Marcus Webb's office. The air hummed with a quiet, almost reverent energy, the kind that whispers of power and influence. Each step felt both terrifying and exhilarating. His office was a monument to his ego. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, a glittering tapestry that seemed to lay at his feet. The scent of expensive leather from his enormous chair dominated the room, mixed with the faint, sterile aroma of cleaning solution. It felt less like a creative space and more like a surgeon's operating theater. He was perched behind a vast mahogany desk, a king on his throne, barely looking up as I was ushered in. His eyes, when they finally met mine, were cold, assessing, like I was a piece of livestock, not an artist. "Maya, is it?" he'd said, his voice smooth, almost bored. He didn't offer a handshake. Didn't offer me a seat, though. I stood there, guitar case clutched in my sweaty palm, my heart thundering, a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The silence stretched, taut and uncomfortable. I could hear the distant thrum of traffic from the street below, a world away from the suffocating pressure of this room. I'd played, one of my originals, a song I'd poured my soul into, a raw, honest piece about feeling like an outsider. My voice, raspy from years of singing in smoky bars, filled the sterile space. I thought, for a fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Interest? Surprise? It was gone as quickly as it came. The final chord resonated, then died, the silence rushing back in, heavier this time. The echo of my own voice felt alien in that polished, impersonal room. He'd leaned back in his leather throne, a small, dismissive smile playing on his lips. Interesting, he'd conceded, the word feeling like a prelude to a death sentence. You have a certain raw quality. He paused, letting the silence fester. But it's not marketable, Maya. The words delivered with such casual indifference hit me like a physical blow. That voice, it's too raspy, too unconventional. Radio won't play it. Mainstream audiences won't get it. It's a niche sound, and we're not in the business of niches. He waved a dismissive hand. We're in the business of hits. Each word was a perfectly aimed dart, puncturing years of hope. The humiliation burned in my cheeks. I'd wanted to argue, to defend myself, to tell him he was wrong, that different wasn't a death sentence. But the words wouldn't come. My throat felt tight, constricted. He saw my distress, and it seemed to amuse him. A tiny, cruel smile touched his lips. The faint scent of his cologne, something spicy and overwhelmingly expensive, seemed to choke me. My assistant will see you out, he'd said, already turning his attention to a stack of papers on his desk, a clear dismissal. Just like that, years of dreaming, of working, of pouring every ounce of myself into my music, reduced to a 5-minute indifferent rejection. I remember the click of the door as his assistant, a young woman with carefully neutral eyes, led me out. She didn't meet my gaze. It felt like a walk of shame. Then, the ultimate indignity. Security had to escort me from the building, as if I, in my heartbroken state, posed some kind of threat. Their presence felt like a brand, marking me as unwanted. I'd made it to my car, the battered Honda that had ferried me to countless gigs before I crumbled. The carefully constructed dam of composure burst, and sobs racked my body. The steering wheel felt cold and unforgiving beneath my forehead as I wept. The raw, agonizing sounds muffled by the cheap upholstery. The city skyline, once a symbol of my aspirations, now seemed to mock me through the tear-streaked windshield. The metallic smell of old pennies from the car floor filled my nostrils, a stark contrast to the expensive leather of his office. It was the smell of my reality, crashing down. My phone buzzed. Zoe. Her name flashed on the screen, a lifeline. I answered, my voice a choked whisper. He hated me, Zoe. He said my voice would never sell. Maya? Zoe's voice, firm and unwavering, cut through my despair. Marcus Webb is one man, one ridiculously wealthy, out-of-touch man. He doesn't get to define you. His opinion is not a fact. She rallied me, her words a soothing balm on a raw wound. What does he know about soul, about grit? He's looking for plastic dolls, Maya, and you, my friend, are solid gold, even if it's a little rough around the edges. The pressure was immense. My savings were dwindling. The ticking clock of financial ruin grew louder with each passing day. Giving up music and getting a real job felt like the sensible, responsible thing to do. Everyone, except Zoe, subtly hinted at it. But Marcus Webb's dismissal, his smug certainty, had ignited something within me. A furious, defiant spark. He said my voice was unmarketable. I would prove him wrong. I had to. Wiping my eyes, a new resolve hardening within me, I reached for my phone again. Not to call anyone, but to record. Right there, in the parking lot of Meridian Records, with the sterile glass tower looming behind me, I sang. An act of defiance. A promise to myself. My voice, raw and emotional, filled the small space of my car. This was my proof. This was my worth. He wouldn't be the end of my story. This rejection was not an ending, but a brutal, painful, and absolutely necessary beginning. The world would hear me one way or another. The seed of fractures and gold was planted in that moment of utter devastation, a testament to the fact that sometimes being told you can't is the only motivation you need. I would persist. The decision to go independent wasn't a grand, defiant gesture at first. It was born of necessity and Zoe's relentless optimism. We don't need them, Maya, she'd declared over lukewarm coffee in my tiny apartment. The scent of burnt toast still lingering in the air from my failed attempt at breakfast. We'll do it ourselves. You've got the talent. I'm loud and I know how to use social media. I'll be your manager. And just like that, Zoe, my fiercely loyal whirlwind of a best friend, became my one-woman managerial team. The musty smell of old books in that tiny apartment, a smell I usually found comforting, seemed to press in on me, a reminder of my dwindling funds and the mountain we were about to climb. Our first foray into the independent scene led us to the Velvet Room. It wasn't velvet, and it barely qualified as a room. It was a basement club, tucked away down a graffiti-strewn alley. The kind of place you found by word of mouth, not a flashing marquee. The air inside throbbed with a raw, unfiltered energy. It smelled of stale beer, sweat, and something else. Possibility. The low ceilings vibrated with the bass from a local band, the sound seeping through the concrete floor and into my bones. This was a world away from the polished sterility of Meridian Records. This was real. This was where music was alive, breathing, and beautifully imperfect. I played an open mic night there, my heart pounding a nervous rhythm against my ribs. The small crowd was a mix of hardened music fans, aspiring artists, and the simply curious. When I sang, my voice, the one Marcus Webb had deemed too raspy, too unconventional, seemed to find its home in that dimly lit, gritty space. The usual bar chatter died down. Heads turned. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen, not just heard. There was a raw connection, an understanding that transcended polished production and marketing demographics. After my set, a guy with kind eyes and calloused hands approached me. Jake. He introduced himself, his voice surprisingly gentle for someone who looked like he wrestled amplifiers for a living. I'm the sound engineer here sometimes. Your voice, it's incredible. Don't let anyone tell you different. His words felt like a balm. He got it. He didn't just hear the rasp, he heard the emotion, the story woven into the texture of my vocals, the subtle scent of solder and old electronics clung to him, a perfume of genuine creation. Jake had a makeshift studio in his basement. It was damp, cluttered, and probably violated a dozen fire codes, but it was a haven. The concrete walls seemed to absorb sound and secrets alike. He offered to record a few tracks for me for next to nothing. I just want to hear that voice properly recorded, he'd said, his enthusiasm infectious. So we did. We spent weeks in that basement, fueled by cheap coffee and an unspoken belief that we were on to something. The scent of damp concrete and ozone from the old equipment became the backdrop to the birth of my first EP. Jake treated my voice like a precious instrument, layering it with simple, powerful arrangements that let its raw edges shine. He didn't try to smooth me out to make me more palatable. He celebrated the imperfections. The EP, Basement Tapes, was rough, unpolished, but undeniably me. Zoe, true to her word, became a marketing machine. She hounded local radio stations, pestered bloggers, and created a TikTok account for me, despite my initial reluctance. "It's where the kids are, Maya," she'd insisted, her eyes gleaming with strategic fervor. "And your voice? It's made for short, impactful clips." She was right. One night, I was idly scrolling through TikTok, the repetitive beat of a viral dance challenge grating on my nerves when I saw it. A 15-second clip of me singing the hook from Shattered Glass, one of the tracks from the EP. It was just a simple video shot in Jake's basement, the bare bulb overhead casting long shadows. But something about the raw emotion, the unfiltered sound, resonated. The views were climbing. Fast. Hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands. Comments flooded in. "Her voice is everything. Who is this? I need more." This gave me chills. My heart stuttered. Could this be it? A tiny spark of hope ignited in the overwhelming darkness of the past few months. The TikTok moment wasn't just a blip, it surged into a wave. People discovered the full EP, they shared it. They came to my gigs at the Velvet Room, which were suddenly selling out. We built a grassroots fan base, one intimate performance, one heartfelt connection at a time. They weren't just fans. They were a community, drawn together by a shared appreciation for something real, something unvarnished. The vibration of the bass through the floorboards of the Velvet Room during those packed shows felt like a collective heartbeat. A small indie label, intrigued by the online buzz, approached us. They offered a modest deal, a chance to get my music to a wider audience. It was tempting. The allure of a little more security, a slightly bigger budget, beckoned. But they also talked about refining my sound, about making me more radio-friendly. The ghost of Marcus Webb's words echoed in my mind. I looked at Zoe, at Jake. We'd come this far on our own terms. I remembered the damp, comforting smell of Jake's basement, the place where my voice was allowed to be itself. I politely declined their offer. The quiet power move felt liberating. I was learning to value my uniqueness, not as a liability, but as my greatest strength. This was my music, my voice. I would not compromise it, not again. The online momentum continued to build. Playlists featured my songs. Bloggers raved. Then, an email landed in Zoe's overflowing inbox. An email with a subject line that made her shriek so loudly, I thought she'd seen a mouse. It was from a curator at a major streaming platform. They'd noticed my music. They were interested. The air in my tiny apartment suddenly crackled with an almost unbearable tension. This could change everything. The scent of instant coffee, our usual fuel, suddenly seemed inadequate for the magnitude of the moment. We needed champagne, even if we couldn't afford it yet. The underground rise was on the verge of breaking into the sunlight. The Spotify playlist placement was like a rocket launch. One day, I was an underground artist with a dedicated but niche following. The next, Shattered Glass, was blasting from car stereos and cafe speakers across the country. My phone exploded with notifications. Listeners were discovering not just that one song, but the entire Basement Tapes EP. The raw, unpolished sound that Marcus Webb had dismissed as unmarketable was suddenly resonating with hundreds of thousands, then millions. It felt surreal, a dream I was afraid to wake up from. The static of a dozen new radio stations simultaneously adding my song to their rotation became the soundtrack to my disbelief. Meetings started happening. Real meetings in offices that didn't smell of damp concrete. Labels, big and small, were suddenly interested. They talked about my unique sound, my authentic voice. The very things that had once been liabilities were now my selling points. It was a dizzying, disorienting experience. The ghosts of past rejections whispered in the corners of these sleek boardrooms, making me question the sincerity of the sudden interest. Then I met Sarah Chen. Her label, Resonance Records, was an independent powerhouse, known for championing artists with distinct voices and strong artistic visions. Our first meeting wasn't in a sterile office, but a bustling, slightly chaotic creative space that smelled of fresh paint and new ideas. Sarah wasn't like the other executives. She didn't talk about changing me or fitting me into a mold. She talked about my lyrics, about the emotion in my voice, about the stories I was telling. She offered me complete creative freedom, a partnership, not a dictatorship. She saw the fractures and she saw the gold. The smooth, cool texture of the demo CD I'd nervously handed her felt like a talisman in my hand as she spoke. The decision to sign with Resonance Records instead of attempting to go fully solo, or worse, signing with a major who might try to dilute my sound, felt right. It was a calculated risk, but it was my risk on my terms. Sarah understood. She believed. That was all that mattered. The memory of Marcus Webb's condescending smirk fueled my determination to make this work, to prove that authenticity could and would sell. Recording the full album, which I titled Fractures and Gold, was an entirely different experience from the basement sessions with Jake. Resonance provided a proper studio, top-tier musicians, a budget that allowed for more than instant coffee. But Jake was there. As my co-producer, his calm presence a constant reminder of where I'd come from. We worked tirelessly, meticulously crafting each song, ensuring that the polish didn't dull the raw edges. The studio became my sanctuary, the rich scent of old wood and expensive microphones, a comforting contrast to the anxieties that gnawed at me. The smooth, cool texture of the high-end microphone in the recording booth felt like an extension of myself as I poured every ounce of emotion into each take. There were days filled with doubt, days when the pressure to create something that would live up to the sudden hype felt crushing. What if Shattered Glass was a fluke? What if Marcus was right, and I was just a niche artist with a lucky break? Zoe, ever the pragmatist and cheerleader, would drag me out for air, reminding me of how far I'd come. Sarah would gently guide me back to the music, her faith unwavering. The memory of being escorted out of Meridian like a common criminal surfaced sometimes. A cold knot of anxiety in my stomach, but I pushed it down. I wouldn't let that experience define this one. This was a chance to be reborn professionally. Then came the day the first single from the album, Unbreakable, was scheduled for its radio premiere. Zoe, Jake, and I were huddled around a small radio in the studio lounge, the air thick with anticipation. The DJ chattered excitedly about the new track from that breakout indie artist with the incredible voice. The static as he cued the song felt deafening. And then, it was there. My voice, my words, soaring out of the speakers, clear and strong. Tears streamed down my face. It wasn't just a song on the radio. It was validation. It was a middle finger to everyone who'd ever told me I wasn't good enough. My voice trembled as I tried to thank Jake and Zoe, the emotion too big for words. The journey to this point had been fraught with challenges, with moments where I wanted to give up. But hearing my song, my art, being shared with the world in that way, it transformed everything. It wasn't just about proving Marcus Webb wrong anymore, it was about proving myself right. It was about the music, the connection, the sheer, unadulterated joy of creation. I had conquered my own doubts, my own fears. I felt liberated. One of the quiet power moves I insisted on during contract negotiations with Sarah was ownership of my master recordings. It was a point many new artists conceded, but for me, it was non-negotiable. My music was mine. My voice was mine. No one would own it or control it ever again. Sarah, to her credit, understood and agreed. It was a testament to the kind of label Resonance was. The album release date was fast approaching. The pre-orders were strong, the buzz was deafening. But the question still lingered, a knot of tension in my stomach. Would Fractures and Gold succeed commercially, or would it just be a critically acclaimed indie darling? The stakes felt impossibly high. My future, my career, the culmination of years of struggle, all rested on this one collection of songs. The ticking clock wasn't just about a release date anymore. It was about proving that a voice like mine, a story like mine, truly belonged. Album release week was a blur of anxiety and exhilarating anticipation. Every phone call, every email, every social media notification sent my heart into overdrive. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by a caffeine-fueled restlessness. The scent of stale coffee and nervous energy permeated my small apartment. Zoe was a whirlwind of activity, coordinating interviews, checking early streaming numbers, and generally acting as my human shield against the overwhelming stress. Jake sent encouraging texts, his quiet confidence a steadying anchor. Sarah and the Resonance team were cautiously optimistic, but the industry was notoriously fickle. Then the first week's sales numbers came in. I was in a tiny, stuffy radio station green room, waiting to go on air for an interview, the air thick with the smell of old carpet and industrial cleaner. Zoe burst in, her face flushed, eyes wide. She didn't say anything, just shoved her phone in my face. I stared at the screen, the numbers swimming before my eyes. It took a moment for them to register. We hadn't just done well. We had exceeded every single expectation. Fractures and Gold had debuted in the top 10. Top 10. A wave of dizziness washed over me. Tears pricked at my eyes, blurring the already unbelievable figures. All I could do was whisper, "Oh my God." The sound engineer for the radio show poked his head in, oblivious. "Maya, you're on in too?" The interviews that followed were a whirlwind. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk about my unique voice, the grit, the raw emotion. The very things Marcus Webb had labeled as career killers were now being celebrated as my signature strengths. I found myself speaking with a newfound confidence, addressing his rejection not with bitterness, but with a quiet conviction. My voice is different, yes, I'd say, the heat of the studio spotlights on my face feeling like a validation. And for a long time, people in this industry told me that was a problem. But I think listeners are tired of cookie-cutter sounds. They want something real. They want to hear the imperfections because that's where the humanity is. It felt good to say it out loud, to reclaim the narrative. I was vindicating myself, word by word. Of course, not everyone was singing my praises. Meridian Records, through an unnamed source quoted in an industry rag, publicly dismissed my success as a fluke, a TikTok anomaly. Marcus Webb's fingerprints were all over the dismissive tone. It stung briefly, but the roar of the crowds at my increasingly larger venues soon drowned out his petty sniping. We announced a national tour, and venue after venue sold out within hours. Standing on those stages, the roar of the crowd a physical force against my chest, the heat of the spotlight a familiar embrace, I felt truly empowered. The most incredible part was connecting with the fans. After every show, I'd meet them, hear their stories. So many of them related to feeling different, to being told they weren't enough, whether it was about their voice, their dreams, their very identity. They saw my journey as their own. They found strength in my refusal to be silenced. The scent of their hopeful energy, a mix of sweat, cheap perfume, and pure adoration, was intoxicating. It was a potent reminder of why I did this. One young woman, tears in her eyes, clutched my hand after a show in Chicago. "Your song, Unbreakable," she'd whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "It saved me." Those moments challenged any lingering doubt, any echo of Webb's negativity. They elevated the music beyond sales figures and chart positions. During a particularly emotional show in my hometown, I looked out at the sea of faces, all singing my lyrics back to me. It was overwhelming. Before launching into Voice Unchained, a song I'd written specifically about the rejection and the fight to be heard, I took a moment. This one, I said, my voice thick but steady, is for everyone out there who's ever been told they weren't good enough. For anyone who's ever been made to feel small or different or like they don't belong. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The ensuing roar shook the foundations of the old theater. It was more than a concert. It was a communion. It was a quiet power move, a dedication that resonated far beyond the venue walls. This was me, fully embracing my authentic self, flaws and all. This was me, reborn in their acceptance. The album continued to climb. The tour was a triumph. Media outlets that had once ignored me were now clamoring for exclusives. And then, the call came from Sarah. Her voice was ecstatic. "Maya, are you sitting down?" My heart leapt. "Why? What's happened?" "Fractures and gold," she breathed, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "It's officially certified platinum." Platinum! The word hung in the air, shimmering with an almost impossible light. 1,000,000 copies. 1,000,000 people who had connected with my unmarketable voice. The sterile scent of the tour bus, a mix of diesel and old dreams, suddenly felt like the most luxurious place on earth. The climb had been arduous, relentless, but standing on this peak, the view was breathtaking. The platinum certification wasn't just a sales metric, it was a symbol that different could be dominant, and it was within reach. The platinum plaque was heavy in my hands, cool and substantial. Its polished surface reflected my stunned face. 1,000,000. It still felt unreal. The call from Sarah Chen a few days prior had sent ripples of joyous disbelief through our entire camp. We'd celebrated, of course, a wild, tearful night that ended with Zoe and me watching the sunrise from my hotel balcony, the city lights twinkling below like fallen stars. The crisp morning air had smelled of victory and exhaustion. But the true impact, the seismic shift, came a week later. An industry analyst known for his sharp, often brutal dissections of label performance published his quarterly report. Zoe forwarded it to me with a single word. Boom. I opened the attachment, my heart thumping a familiar rhythm of nervous anticipation. The report was dense, full of charts and jargon, but one paragraph leapt out, highlighted in lurid yellow by Zoe. It stated in clear, unequivocal terms that my independent album, Fractures in Gold, released on Resonance Records, had, in the last quarter, outsold the entire combined roster of Meridian Records. Dominated. That was the word he used. My little indie success hadn't just outsold a few of their artists, it had eclipsed them all. The musty, phantom smell of Marcus Webb's office returned with a vengeance, but this time, it was accompanied by the sweet, sharp scent of vindication. The irony was so potent, it was almost painful. Marcus, with his pronouncements of marketability, his dismissal of my niche sound, had presided over a label that was now being publicly humiliated by the very artist he'd so casually discarded. It was a full-circle moment of staggering proportions. I thought of that brutal rejection, the casual cruelty in his eyes, the way he'd made me feel so small, so worthless. And now this. It wasn't just about the platinum plaque anymore. This was about a fundamental shift, a rebellion against the gatekeepers. This was me reclaiming my power. Then the inevitable happened. My phone rang, an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Maya, darling." The voice was smooth, oily, instantly recognizable. "Marcus Webb." My stomach twisted. "Incredible news about the album, truly. We always knew you had potential, even if the timing wasn't quite right for us back then." The audacity left me speechless for a moment. He was trying to rewrite history, to spin his outright rejection into a mere matter of unfortunate timing. He prattled on about a new AANDR direction at Meridian, about how they were now actively seeking out unique, authentic voices like mine. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Then came the pitch, the desperate, transparent attempt to capitalize on my success. "We'd love to have you come in, Maya, talk about the future, perhaps a joint venture." Meridian has resources that a small indie like Resonance can only dream of. He was trying to sign me. The man who said my voice would never have a real career now wanted to profit from it. A cold calm settled over me. I let him finish, his voice oozing false sincerity. The silence stretched, and I could almost hear his nervous breathing on the other end. "Marcus," I said, my voice even, devoid of the anger that simmered beneath the surface. "Thank you for the call, and for your interest." I paused, letting the word hang there. "But I seem to recall you telling me my voice was unmarketable, that I'd never have a real career." Another pause. Funny how things change, isn't it? Before he could respond, before he could spew any more disingenuous flattery, I ended the call. Refused. The click of the disconnect button was one of the most satisfying sounds I'd ever heard. It felt like slamming a door on the past, on his power, on his ability to ever make me feel small again. The industry recognition started pouring in. Award nominations, Best New Artist, Album of the Year, Song of the Year, magazine covers, invitations to play prestigious festivals. It was a whirlwind, a dizzying ascent. Each accolade felt like another layer of validation, another nail in the coffin of Marcus Webb's pronouncements. The weight of the platinum plaque in my office, the crisp, important sound of award nomination documents rustling on my desk. These were tangible proofs of a dream once deferred, now spectacularly realized. Zoe, of course, was ecstatic, already planning my award show outfits. Jake was quietly proud, his steady belief in me unwavering from the start. Sarah Chen just smiled, that knowing, supportive smile that had given me the courage to take the leap with Resonance. Now looking at my phone, at Marcus's condescending text message from the party, the one that had shattered my champagne flute and briefly my composure, I knew exactly what to do. My response wouldn't be a private text back to him. No, my response would be public. It would be powerful. It would be a testament to every artist who'd ever been told they weren't enough. The plan I'd been vaguely formulating earlier now crystallized. It was time to take that screenshot of his text and my sales figures and share it. But not just share it, I would frame it. I would tell the whole story. As a quiet power move, even before crafting my public response, I called Sarah. "I want to set up a scholarship," I told her, the idea forming even as I spoke. "For young artists with unconventional voices, the ones the big labels won't touch. I want to give them the chance I almost didn't get." Resonance Records would fund it, using a portion of the profits from Fractures and Gold. It felt right. It felt like transforming my personal victory into something bigger, something that could change the industry, even in a small way. It was a way to ensure other unique voices wouldn't be silenced before they even had a chance to sing. My journey had come full circle in so many ways. The Velvet Room, the dingy basement club that had been my first real home in the music scene, called. They wanted me to do a special, unannounced performance. Just me and my guitar, like in the old days. To return there, not as a struggling unknown, but as a platinum-selling artist, felt like the perfect coda to this chapter. The core conflict, the one that had raged within me since Marcus Webb's dismissal. Am I good enough? Does my voice deserve to be heard? Was finally, blessedly, resolved. Yes. The answer was a resounding, platinum-plated yes. I had transcended his judgment. The post went live at 9 a.m. A simple carousel. First, the screenshot of Marcus Webb's condescending text. Second, the side-by-side comparison of my platinum sales next to Meridian Records' dismal quarterly figures. Third, a photo of me not polished and promo-ready, but raw and tear-streaked in my car outside Meridian Records 18 months ago, the day he'd dismissed me. The final slide was the newly designed logo for the Unconventional Voices Scholarship, funded by Resonance Records and myself. The caption was short, direct, and from the heart. 18 months ago, Marcus Webb, then head of Meridian Records, told me my voice was unmarketable and that I'd never have a real career. He escorted me out with security. This morning, my debut album Fractures and Gold was certified platinum, outselling Meridian's entire Q3 roster. This isn't just about sales. It's for everyone who has ever been told they aren't enough. Your voice matters, your story matters. To honor this, I'm launching the Unconventional Voices Scholarship with at Resonance Records to support artists who dare to be different. He said my voice would never sell records. We just outsold his entire label. Hash Voice Unchained, Hash Fractures, and Gold Hash Unconventional Voices. The internet exploded. The story went viral within minutes. News outlets picked it up. Fellow musicians, big and small, shared it with messages of support. Fans rallied, creating their own hashtags, sharing their own stories of rejection and perseverance. It became more than just my story. It became a movement, a collective roar against the gatekeepers, against the narrow definitions of success the industry tried to impose. The fresh ink smell of the scholarship charter I'd signed with Sarah only days before felt like the scent of a new beginning, not just for me, but for others. I had inspired a conversation that was long overdue. Marcus Webb went silent. Meridian Records' social media was flooded with negative comments. Industry insiders whispered about his future at the label. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. My days transformed. Beyond the tours and the promotion, I started mentoring some of the young artists who applied for the scholarship. I'd meet them in the small, vibrant studio Resonance had helped me set up, a far cry from Jake's basement, but imbued with the same spirit of creative freedom. The warm acoustics of my own studio, a space designed to nurture and encourage, felt like a sanctuary. I'd listen to their demos, their voices raw, unique, and often breathtaking. I saw myself in their hopeful eyes and their nervous energy. I nurtured their talent, offering the guidance and belief I had so desperately craved. One young woman, Lila, particularly reminded me of myself. She had a voice like smoky velvet, a soulful rasp that the mainstream would undoubtedly try to sandpaper down. She was hesitant, almost apologetic about her sound. They told me it's too specific, she'd whispered during our first meeting, her eyes downcast. The faint scent of lavender and old guitar strings clung to her, a smell of quiet, hidden artistry. Specific is good, Lila, I'd told her, my voice firm but gentle. Specific is memorable. Don't let anyone tell you that your uniqueness is a weakness. It's your superpower. I saw the flicker of hope in her eyes, the same spark that had ignited in me all those months ago. This was the legacy I wanted to build. Not one of bitterness or revenge, but one of empowerment. I wanted to revolutionize the way the industry saw unconventional talent to protect these unique voices from the homogenizing machine. Zoe, ever the brilliant strategist, suggested I start my own small imprint under Resonance Records, specifically for these artists. Golden Voice Records, she dubbed it with a wink, because you find the golden voices others discard. It felt right. The contracts for Golden Voice Records, printed on heavy, expensive paper, smelled of possibility, of futures being written. I offered Lila the first contract with Golden Voice. I didn't make her audition in a sterile office. We sat in my studio, sunlight streaming through the windows. I asked her to sing, not for me to judge, but for me to hear her soul. As her voice, rich and textured, filled the room, a quiet power move in its own right, I didn't just hear a talented singer, I heard the future. I offered her the opportunity I never had, a label that believed in her from day one, a mentor who understood the scars of rejection and the triumph of authenticity. This was my character arc completing its journey, from desperately seeking validation to confidently providing it for others. She looked at me, tears welling. You really think I can do this? Lila, I said, my own voice thick with emotion. I don't think it. I know it. She nodded, a slow, dawning smile spreading across her face. She picked up her guitar, and the first, tentative notes of one of her original songs drifted through the studio. I leaned back, a genuine, unburdened smile on my face. The cycle of believing in unconventional talent, of nurturing voices that dared to be different, was continuing. And my voice, the one Marcus Webb had tried to silence, was now the one amplifying the voices of tomorrow. The music flourished. This was more than success. This was a legacy reborn. 6 months drifted by in a whirlwind of creativity and quiet revolution. Golden Voice Records was no longer just an idea. It was a thriving little hub of unconventional talent. We'd signed 5 artists, each one a testament to the beauty of being different. Lila's debut EP was already creating a buzz in the indie scene, her smoky vocals captivating everyone who heard them. The studio hummed with a constant, gentle energy, the scent of fresh coffee and new music a permanent fixture. The silence before an artist signed their contract, a silence filled with hope and trepidation, became one of my favorite sounds. Then came the news, delivered by Sarah Chen over a surprisingly formal lunch. Meridian Records is in trouble, Maya, she said, her tone serious. Deep trouble. The fallout from everything. It hit them hard. Their top artists are jumping ship. Their financials are a mess. She paused, then dropped the bombshell. They're looking for a buyout, and an investment group, one that knows your history with them, has approached Resonance. They want to know if we would be interested in acquiring Meridian. More specifically, if you would be interested in being part of that acquisition. The irony was staggering. Poetic justice served on a silver platter. The label that had rejected me, humiliated me, tried to break me. I now had the potential to own it. The thought sent a jolt, a complex mix of triumph and unease through me. My initial visceral reaction was a surge of vengeful satisfaction. Imagine me, Maya, walking back into that building, not as a supplicant, but as the boss. The thought of Marcus Webb's face. But as the initial shock subsided, a different feeling emerged. What would it actually achieve? Revenge felt hollow, a temporary satisfaction that would ultimately change nothing fundamental. Did I want to be tied to that place, to those memories, even as its owner? The silent hum of my own thriving studio, filled with artists I believed in, felt far more compelling than the ghosts of Meridian. I contemplated the offer for days. Zoe was all for it, seeing it as the ultimate power move. Jake was characteristically quiet, simply saying, "Whatever you choose, Maya, make sure it's for the right reasons." The investment group arranged a meeting. Marcus Webb was there. He looked diminished. The arrogant swagger was gone, replaced by a desperate, almost pleading air. The expensive suit hung on him a little loosely. The scent of his power, that overwhelming leather and cologne, was fainter now, almost diluted by an undercurrent of fear. He tried to be charming, to flatter, to convince me that this was a synergistic opportunity. He talked about rebuilding Meridian, with me at the helm, a new era of authenticity. It was a performance, and a bad one at that. I listened politely. I let him spin his narrative. Then, I asked him one question. "Marcus, if I, as an unknown artist, walked into Meridian today with my unmarketable voice, would you sign me?" His eyes flickered. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He couldn't answer. He knew the truth. And in that moment, I knew my decision. "Thank you for the offer," I said, standing up, "but I'm not interested in buying Meridian Records." The words felt clean, liberating. I'm interested in building something new, something better. I walked out of that meeting away from the ghosts of rejection, away from the allure of a shallow revenge. I chose to move forward, not to dwell on the past. I released the need to prove him wrong on his own turf. My quiet power move was not in acquiring his crumbling empire, but in walking away from it to invest in the future I was already creating. My focus was on artist development, on nurturing the unique, not on salvaging the outdated. Later that week, I signed another young artist to Golden Voice, a quirky songwriter with lyrics that danced on the edge of brilliance. The gentle hum of my studio as she played her songs for me was more satisfying than any boardroom victory could ever be. My success wasn't about proving Marcus Webb wrong anymore. It was, and always had been, about proving myself right. About the unwavering belief in my own voice, my own vision. His label eventually sold for parts, a footnote in industry news. It barely registered with me. I was too busy listening to demos, too busy fostering talent, too busy making music. My voice, once deemed unmarketable, unviable, unwanted, now had a singular purpose: to discover, to champion, and to amplify the other unmarketable voices of tomorrow. It had transformed from a source of pain into a source of power, not just for me, but for a new generation of artists who dared to be different. The new chapter wasn't just mine, it belonged to all of them. And the music, in all its unconventional glory, played on,